Hi, my name is Elizabeth McPherson, and this is my case study for data analysis and assessment. Every day counts. So, looking into the case study, we are looking at a high school here. So, Golden Oaks High School has just shy of 1,000 students in grades 9 through 12. There is a lot of extra credit or extracurricular opportunities for these students. There is a new principal that has come into the school, and he is being tasked with identifying the kind of cause of attendance concerns. At this time, the school has the lowest attendance in the district. But kind of some positives for the school is that they do have a reputation for teacher retention. So they've got some teachers with some established credibility with the students. However, they're seeing a big decline in attendance. So the community that Golden Oaks sets in is mostly middle income families. So it seems like it has recently become more diversified with some more diverse community members moving in. And most of the parents work for local industries or own their own businesses in the community. So we understand that there is some attendance policies that are maybe not being followed in this situation. So the district has made it pretty clear what their attendance policy is for the district. So first of all, they've made it clear that they will align with the state law, which does require students to be at school, requires parents to be sending their kids to school. They will excuse absences in the case of illness, death of a family member, inclement weather, or a valid reason that is excused by the principal prior to the absence. So this district policy also states that they cannot have more than 5 unexcused absences in a class. After those 5 absences, teachers are, you know, uh, not encouraged, but teachers can remove 10 points from their grade overall. So there is in this case study a good outline of what's happening attendance wise. So there are 5 students that the principal looks into to kind of see what's happening with data. So the first student that the principal looks into is Karen. Karen is a junior 11th grade student. She typically has had A, B grades in the past couple of years, positive teacher comments on her report cards. She's a National Honor Society student, but they're seeing that her current work is significantly declining. One thing that the principal notes is that she did get married in August right before school started. The parents had called the school to request some counseling services, but in the records that the principal could find, the counselor never met with Karen. So it seemed like she was mostly missing Mondays and Fridays, so looked like she was trying to get those long weekends in. And she had at that point missed 2 midterms, which was probably causing some pretty serious grade concerns. Another student that the principal looked into was Tyrone. He's a 10th grade student in the honors program. He had 14 days of absence in the first semester. He was performing on average for his classes, but the records did indicate that his parents had kind of continually excused him from school due to family travel. Mom had a business trip, dad was taking a trip to a location the student had never been at, so they were kind of continually justifying his absences. And in the records, the principal did find that the homeroom teacher was excusing these absences despite the school policy of just 3 days for personal leave. The next student the principal looks into is Christina. She's a freshman. She attends regular classes, no honors, no any kind of thing extra like that. She missed 4 days in a row for several weeks. So 3 separate weeks, they noted 4 out of 5 days absent. So what the principal finds in her file is that there are some notes from her minister excusing her for out of town church meetings. However, there really aren't specifics. It's not where she's going, why she's going it, maybe the name of the conference she's attending, anything like that. It's just kind of these general like, hey, she's got to be gone for church kind of things. The algebra teacher did request a parent meeting, mostly because the student had been missing some major exams, and the homeroom teacher was signing off on these church absences. So we're seeing some kind of inconsistencies here with Christina and some pretty significant low grades. Carl is the next student that is observed. He's a 10th grade student. He's in regular classes in the morning and attends vocational classes in the afternoon. So he's kind of just randomly missing days. He was referred to a truancy officer who went to his house, but when the truancy officer went to his house, his parents were kind of like, yeah, we don't really necessarily support these strong attendance policies. If he doesn't feel good, he's going to stay home. End of story. He does have siblings in the school district, and the principal is, interested to know what the attendance of those siblings looks like as well. And then the last student that's looked into is John. He's a junior quarterback on the football team. He has an injury that requires him now to have physical therapy. So his athletic director not only is kind of approving this therapy during the school day, but then on top of that is requesting he misses out Friday afternoons to rest. I'm reading between the lines here, but I'm assuming it's so that he's fresh for the football game Friday night. So he's missing afternoon classes 3 times per week, but there's really no record indicating excessive absence that the principal can find. So, so we do see some obvious legal and ethical issues here. So the first blaring kind of evident legal issue is that there are legal requirements for attendance. There's state and federal obligations for kids to be at school. So we have this kind of understanding that the states have the authority to ensure that kids are going to school. This statute kind of recognizes the well-being of communities and states when we have educated citizens. And so it is the parents' legal obligation and the school's obligation to make sure kids are attending school. And then we also have this attendance reporting by teachers. It is a legal obligation of educational professionals to be in compliance with attendance laws. In other words, teachers have the legal obligation to record attendance and record it accurately. So the ethical issues that we see are kind of to think of like who is actually responsible for these attendance violations. Is it teachers? Is it parents? Is it administrators? Is it the district? So where are we kind of placing the blame, so to speak, on these kids missing schools? And then these teachers violating reporting. So this is a legal issue that teachers have to attend it, but it's also this ethical issue of, are they intentionally not recording attendance? Are they excusing things, that they think are excusable, but not going with school policy, things like that. And then obviously some ethical issues with parent and school connections. It looks like some parents had requested time with counselors. Other kids probably should have gotten some time with counselors that didn't receive it. So what kind of responsibility do we have to these families to be taking care of the kids when they are at school? And how is that causing them to not show up at school if they're not receiving those services they need when they are at school? So here is my synthesis of the case. After receiving a new appointment as principal of Golden Oak High School and being challenged with the task to improve declining attendance, Mr. Rhodes discovers several inconsistencies and legal infractions with attendance reporting within the school. So here are the people that's involved. So obviously the Principal Rhodes, he's new to the school, being asked to look into this attendance issue. He has a huge stake in kind of how this comes out. The teachers and the counselors are involved. They're the ones actually reporting these absences, approving the absences, and they're kind of the people established in their schools. These families have had probably multiple kids with multiple of these teachers, and so they're kind of setting the tone for what happens in the school, especially with a new principal. The parents are involved. There is a legal expectation for them to not only attend school, but parents want that kind of communication with the school of like, hey, what's happening? My kid's not attending. What's happening with their grades? Things like that. And then obviously the students are involved. There is a variety of circumstances for each one of these students. Maybe some argument for excusing these absences, maybe some argument to not, but ultimately the students are the ones being affected by, the teachers and the administration not doing their job with attendance. So the place is, again, Golden Oaks High School, 965 students, 9 through 12, and there's a significant kind of emphasis on how much there is for these students to do. So what I kind of took away from that is this place is important to the community. It's important to the families who rely on these extracurricular activities for their students. It's important for the community as a whole to have a reputable high school. The community that this is in, is this middle income families, this newly diverse population, and these parents are working. They're commuting a long time. They're really relying on the school to kind of play a huge role in their child's life overall. So the curriculum isn't, very explicit, but it does allude to the fact that there's some honors programming, some regular coursework, that there's lots of opportunities for these to get kids to kind of do these extracurriculars. There's 11 sports in the district, 31 clubs and organizations. And the teachers, again, there's this low turnover rate. There's this consistency with them staying in their classroom, staying with their coursework. That's really establishing this reputation from a school perspective in terms of programming. It seems like from outward appearance, this maybe wouldn't be a school that would have issues. So the stakeholders that are involved, we just kind of talked about the people, but there is significant potential for damage to the community and to the stakeholders. Obviously, as soon as this issue is brought to the attention of the staff at the school, there could be some disagreement. There could be some decision making that has to happen in terms of what's excused, what's not excused, and there might be some disagreement when that happens. This principal is technically an outsider to this community. He's newly appointed. Maybe he's been a teacher in this district. It doesn't allude to that, but we've got this understanding that he's kind of stepping into something established as an outsider. And then obviously school rating and reputation is on the line. If we can't straighten out this attendance issue, there's going to be some probably community impact here as well. So the administration has stake in this outcome because of the legal implications for the school with attendance. I always like to think about these case studies as like, what do you look like in the news? We want our schools to obviously have the good articles and not the bad articles. The staff is going to have an outcome in how this happens. They have this obligation to report accurately, and based on what continues to happen, there could be far more kind of guidelines put on them in terms of attendance. And then the students and families are very much impacted by this. It seems like it's pretty clear that there's some inconsistency in what's expected of attendance, and that can play a huge role in how families interact and perceive their school experience. So some things that I would want to consider above what was told in the article is how, who and how has attendance been addressed with students in the past. So what training is being offered to the staff regarding attendance? What training is being provided to parents regarding attendance? What are we telling our parents about what's important about coming to school? And then we kind of saw 5 examples of like poor attendance monitoring, but maybe where are the examples of good attendance in the district? What circumstances are we seeing for kids who are able to attend school successfully? What kind of services are in place? Are they getting to see the counselor? Are parents coming in and meeting with teachers? What differences are we seeing between the kids who are not being successful at attending school and the kids who are? So option number 1 obviously is for the principal to do nothing about it, to be like, oh, that sucks. Our attendance is terrible. Move on. So it's hard to find some pros in this situation, but obviously it does avoid conflict. He's not having to address these veteran teachers. He's not having to plan any kind of big confrontation about attendance. And it's less work for him maybe in the short term. I think in the long term it's not, but in the short term, he's not really having to do anything to deal with it. Obvious cons are that it violates legal attendance requirements. There could be some serious legal consequences. And it kind of like sets the tone that policy and procedure doesn't matter. That district policy doesn't matter, state law doesn't matter, like, meh, do what you want. It communicates low expectations for legal compliance. Again, like if we don't set the precedent that the attendance is important, it's not going to be taken as important. There's no professional growth for any of the teachers in this situation. No one is confronted with their possible, misunderstandings of what attendance should look like, and nothing's getting fixed. And ultimately, the biggest con of this is that kids will continue to miss school. Attendance will continue to be low, and the kids, academics will ultimately suffer from this option. Option 2 would be kind of the opposite and some swift action. The principal steps in right away. There's serious action against the teachers and coaches, maybe some permanent record reviews, maybe some people get fired. I mean, it's kind of like all of a sudden we come in and we really try to take care of this. Attendance becomes closely monitored and reported on, and maybe it's, really overboard on checking in on attendance. So the pros here is it does establish some sense of leadership for decision making. This principal is going to come in. I'm going to tell you how it's done. We're going to follow up on doing it. We got to do it this way. Holds to that conviction of legal responsibility, encourages growth in the staff, and sets a future precedent for action. So again, just kind of very action oriented here. It just kind of sets a tone. The cons for this is there's a high probability for some conflict. If we just kind of come in with guns blazing, someone's not going to be happy. It alienates the staff and parents, maybe when you just kind of smash the hammer down, especially when things have been so different, have been monitored so differently in the past. And there is the possibility to lose staff members, maybe from the removal from their position and maybe from unresolved conflict. And this is likely to cause community concerns. It seems like these teachers are pretty established in this school. And it really puts more rules and less communication into the situation. Option 3 would be to look for trends and implement training. So the principal immediately initiates training procedures based on attendance data from the school, and communication goes out to parents regarding any kind of changes or any policies for attendance. The pros to this, again, it still establishes that leadership, but it's through this growth mentality instead of this authority mentality. It addresses everybody. So there's some pretty key players in these situations listed, the coaches, some of the teachers, the counselors, but really this is a school issue. Everyone in the school has to be on board, otherwise it's still going to suffer. It prevents some long, fruitless arguments. If we kind of just do this all together, we're not just fighting over what's the right way and what's the wrong way. Holds to your legal convictions to obey attendance law, and encourages future professional growth and communication for all members moving forward. So the cons to this might be it's obviously the most time consuming. It's going to take some work for this to be established. There could be some continued pushback. Obviously, these teachers might not appreciate this resolution, and it could cause some divide in the staff. So I do think option 3 is the best option to look at these data trends and implement the treating. I think it takes this leadership to address the staff, but it also leaves room for conversation while addressing the severity of the issue. There is going to be the requirement for the principal to step up in the situation, but I think that there's a way to step up as a team and not as a kind of authority figure. There is a legal obligation to continue to address attendance. Professional development is obviously needed in the area of attendance. It kind of borders and kind of well manages that fine line between pushing and leading. So yes, the principal could stand up and push out, these are the policies, these are the guidelines, do them or else. But there's a leadership quality that will kind of allow him to bring the staff in, analyze the data, talk about what's happening, and make a plan as a school. And I think that shows that leadership over that authority. And then it establishes some expectations for the future. Again, what are we going to do when legal or policy issues come into play? How are we going to address this as a team, as a school? So here are the steps I would take to implement this. First, I would create a team to start analyzing the data. So let's start looking at, what actually is happening on a larger scale. So we saw 5 students, but what's happening with 500 students? What's happening with 1,000 students? And let's start looking at how that's impacting student learning. Let's start comparing attendance data to performance data. Let's start comparing that to specific coursework and see where we're at. Once we can compile that data, let's present it to the staff. So we have this kind of core team that's taking care of the nitty gritty. We're going to present it and then give everyone the opportunity to share their voice. Kind of this understanding of knowing is powerful. Like, do the teachers really understand that when they excuse an absence they shouldn't excuse, what snowball effect that really has overall? And again, first period, you might think, oh, I'm just going to excuse these tardies all the time, but you don't understand how that's impacting them by the time they get to 7th period and they leave early and things like that. So this kind of knowledge that when our whole staff gets together and looks at the big picture, we really can understand what's happening. And then plan and implement this development. So once you've heard the voices from the staff about what the data says, create some meaningful opportunities for teachers to learn how to do it correctly. Explain the why. Why does it need to be done correctly, for the legal reasons and for the student academic reasons, and then allow some time for feedback. Again, let teachers have a voice in how the concerns they're having about attendance. And then lastly, obviously, as you roll out any kind of new policies, new procedures on attendance taking, monitor and adjust the situation. So make sure that you're watching for that compliance with attendance. Yes, it's great to run data at the end of the semester, but you need to kind of know that daily monitoring. How are we doing with knowing who's in the building every day? And then that can adjust future training. So obviously, everyone could do this. We all could do training. We could all look at the data. We all can understand why it's important. And we really get buckled down and attendance approves. we could mostly be doing it. Most teachers could do it correctly. There could be some conversations, but maybe it's still happening at the cost of personal interpretation. So we all feel differently about what excused absences should be. We all feel differently about the importance of reporting. Ultimately, attendance probably will not improve with this partial participation. There could also be low participation. So again, for the most part, no one's really doing it. We don't want to go to PD. We're on our email during the professional development. We're not listening to why attendance really needs to be taken. And this could really result in some big legal implications for some families whose kids are not attending school. And then option four is obviously everyone just doesn't like it. So, right, all these teachers are resistant. We do not agree with the attendance policies. We're not going to do this PD. We don't like it. What we're doing is fine. There's argument between staff, there's argument in the building, and there's obviously some legal implications for the school and the families when kids do not attend school. So, what happens if we get this low participation or resistance? So, kind of a plan B. What I think would happen next if we really have teacher pushback on this would be move to more administrative control of attendance. So, if I'm a new principal and I'm really tasked with improving this attendance, I might have to take some big moves if I can't get my staff on board. So this might require ID card scanning. Maybe the kids have to scan in. Maybe they have to log into a computer for attendance, whatever that might be. I might need to hire attendance monitors, people that are going around to the classrooms and really checking, hey, you said you only have 17 kids in class today. Is that true? Or, hey, you said you have all 30 kids in this class today, and typically you only have 10. Someone to really monitor this. Because there is a legal obligation by the principal to be following this attendance. So, if you're really going to get the pushback by these staff and it's continuing to be an issue, you might have to kind of put some big moves in play. And then you might need superintendent intervention. What is the district saying are these guidelines? Who do you have to call in maybe from above you to really emphasize to your staff how important attendance monitoring is? So here's the standard we worked on, understanding and demonstrating the capacity to evaluate, develop, and advocate for data-informed, equitable resource planning that supports school improvement and student development. So I liked this case study. It was good to think about this, and I hope you learned something from my presentation. Thank you.